Institute for Faith and Freedom at Grove City College presents Liberty Mail with the Student Fellows of Faith and Freedom.
Welcome back to Liberty Mail. I'm Aaron Jenks, and we have a special interview today with H.G. Goerner, author of the newly book, United States Socialist Republic. And Hugo, thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you on Liberty Mail.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're here with the Institute for Faith and Freedom as always, and it's going to be a fun little interview episode. We're going to be talking through some of the bullet points or some of the talking points of the book. And then let's just start off right away, Hugo. The very first thing I know you wanted to talk about today was the children involved in the first chapter of your book. So tell us a little about it.
Aaron, in the first chapter, I define out where this war, this political war started, this Marxist political war started back almost 40 years ago. In 1984, a gentleman came out of hiding after he was indicted for murder, but walked on it. His name is Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers came out of hiding for 10 years with 2 master's degrees in early childhood education. Then shortly thereafter at Columbia University, he got a PhD in education and curriculum, and he went right after our children. Now we're seeing the ramifications of Antifa and various other Antifa splinter groups going after defying basically demoralizing and trying to destabilize the United States of America. Antifa is the actual epitome of his handiwork.
I think a lot of our viewers and listeners understand Bill Ayers' background and history, actually. We have Dr. Paul Kengor at Grove City College, who's done a phenomenal job working for the Institute, talking about even Bill Ayers, and some of his book, The Devil and Belladonna. If you've not read that, that's also a perfect read for that. So when you're talking about the social engineering of kind of the school system, where do you see specific examples of maybe the Marxist ideology seeping into the public school system?
Bill Ayers actually wanted to, and we have to. I can go on forever about Bill Ayers, but to define it in a specific mode, he wanted to take children and use them for social change. Basically, use children to equate or basically institute social justice. In our documentary, we show him actually talking about social justice, where there's so much injustice in this world. And he would actually break down the American imperialist society that is the cause for all the problems in the United States and around the world. And then children need to rise up and basically be the voice of injustice and try to get things straightened out. And more importantly, he was about taking over. He wanted to actually have a coup d'etat or take over the federal government, the United States government. Now, in and of itself, okay, that can't be done. But more importantly, you have to understand how Bill Ayers, the mindset, when you want to take over the federal government of the United States of America, the guy was literally not just a sociopath. The gentleman was insane. That is virtually impossible in this country. Let's take it this way. Bill Ayers, I tell you what, you have a great idea. If Bill Ayers had a great idea to improve on what we already have, I'm all for it, okay? Hey, Bill, here's our federal government, okay? Now, what are you going to do? He would stop dead in his tracks. He has the most dangerous person would be a person that you can hand him everything. You hand him the government, and he wouldn't know what to do with it. Within a matter of days, we would have an anarchist, chaotic nation where nothing would be working at all. This is the guy, probably one of the most dangerous people on the planet. You can hand it to him and he wouldn't know what to do. But more importantly, a specific thing would be outcome-based education. In our documentary, we talk about, and in fact, there's a gentleman named Jed Brown who identified how it basically works. Basically, through outcome-based education, you can take a child who basically is just looking for an education. Teach me. And basically, you can manipulate that child to do whatever you want. It's called using a Skinner box, I guess what you call form of social engineering. You can literally guide that child in a direction that you want, rather than educate the child and give them the skills, the coping skills that they need to adjust in a social society, and educate them. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. These guys, these Marxists, these sociopaths were literally taking our children in a direction for social justice, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
A lot of stuff you're seeing. Wait, let's walk it back, because I feel like I failed the listener a little bit. Can you tell me, before we keep on going, and because Bill Ayers is a good subject to break down, and you can go along about it, but what is the goal of the United States Socialist Republic? And then also for a listener, Hugo here is the president and founder of Ensured Preservation of America and Our Constitution, EPAC. So please, if you can just go down and give me kind of the goal or the mission of the book, and maybe with the documentary too, because it sounds like the book goes in tangent with the documentary.
Well, actually, it's a precursor to the documentary.
Okay.
It sets up the documentary. But this is a little bit of a longer conversation. And you can't really, but I'm going to try to do the best I can.
Thank you.
The book defines out where the control apparatus. What has happened is you've had the media, through elite capture, the media has been taken over by the Marxist Maoist insurgency into this country, and pretty much for the most part through a control apparatus, they set the narrative, and constant repetitive, I guess what you might say, beating of the people. Pretty soon people begin to think, well, wait a minute, maybe is America that really, maybe America is bad. And they start to, through the Marxist ideology and the political warfare, people start to think, well, maybe their concepts and their perceptions of who they are as the citizens of a nation and who they are as individuals begins to change. It begins to be flooded with this America is bad. America needs to be completely torn down, basically, and rebuilt. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where the Obama talked about fundamental transformation. He didn't say, well, we're going to try to improve this stuff. We're going to try to fundamentally transform it. And one of the things we talked about in our documentary is about where the first step they took, and that was through the Biden administration. The Biden administration compelled the NARA, the National Archives Records Administration, to put a disclaimer on all our founding documents.
Now, you expressed a lot of concerns about the influence, and I won't get into whether there's specific examples of the influences, like you're saying, or insurgency. But how do you, as a viewer of either your book, this podcast, or the documentary, how do you differentiate between the legitimate journalism, the legitimate authors publishing works, maybe teachers or anything in your school district? How do you differentiate between who is actually spreading this Marxist beliefs or who's actually just trying to do something that they believe they want to help people?
Okay. That is a very, very good question. It is the ultimate goal of the person getting the information to use critical thought about everything they hear. Freedom of speech has two parts to it: the ability to speak out, to give information, and the ability to get this information. When I get it, I just cannot accept it on face value. What has happened, we talk about this in our documentary, where they want to cancel you out and get you to the point where you accept on the face value the information that you're getting. But more importantly, what they're trying to wipe out, and when I say they, these are the Marxists, the handful of Marxists in our government, the handful of Marxists throughout the state and local governments, and the thousands upon thousands of organizations, nonprofit and for-profit organizations in this country that are pushing the Marxist ideology, that America is ultimately bad, and guess what? If you're white, automatically you're a racist. But more importantly, what happens is the people, for the longest time, what I'm trying to do is restore the public trust. That's what EPAC stands for. Ensure the preservation of America and our Constitution. But if you go to my website, one of the prime main, I guess what you might say, part of the mission statement is to restore the public trust. Through repeated defaming of the United States, people say, well, is our government that bad? The public trust is virtually on it's like a whisk. You could literally blow it away and it would be gone forever. Once that happens, then the Marxists are basically taking the people's concerns, or not concerns, but definition of themselves. That's what we talk about in the beginning of the documentary. No one, President or Vice President Joe Biden said in a speech at Harvard University at the John F. Kennedy School of Law, he said in part of that hour-long speech, he said, America is not all that great. No one can define for me what it is to be an American. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the very definition of the Marxist progressive ideology. Change your perceptions or break that down so bad and to the very core where you don't know who you are. Guess what? That leaves the door wide open for the Marxists or the Chinese or the Russians or whatever, a foreign entity, to come in and say, oh, this is who you are. And if you do not think that's the case, I beg you to reconsider. This is about changing perceptions and concepts and destroying the public trust in our government. Now, let me say this and finish this part. Our government works. I've been part of the government, not the federal, but at the local level. I've seen it work. I know how it works. I've seen it. It was just working a few years ago. It was working just fine. Now, all of a sudden, we got rampant inflation. We've got immigrants coming in, flooding the nation, and that's a whole nother story. That's going to bring down this country. For the most part, every state that's being inundated with these immigrants is going to suffer economically, and it will start a cascade of what's called sovereign default. But more importantly, the public trust has been eroded so dramatically, it literally can be wiped out completely. But our government works. And now the handful of Marxists, in fact, in our documentary, we talk about a gentleman named Trevor Loudon. Trevor Loudon identifies by name. Actually, he was a great influence and a great part of my life. And guess what? His information, the names, you can go right to his website that we talk about in our documentary, and you see the names: Ariana Presley, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, various other people. But the point is, these liberals have moved so far left. It's rather difficult to say, I don't think you've got the Constitution as your ground.
And you're saying that these names are pointing out individuals working in the government that want to alter the form of government that we have right now?
Well, they make no bones about it. Obama said, and this is what actually in the documentary, he says, I believe it was 5 days before he was elected in 2008. He was in St. Louis, Missouri, I believe. And he says, and I quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, in 5 days, you will witness the fundamental transformation of the United States of America." When I heard that, this is where my critical thought processes come in. And we talked about this. We've got every person that gets this information, whether it's disinformation or conspiracy, it's truth or fact or whatever. The control apparatus wants to take you and stuff you in a corner and say, okay, here's the information, just accept it as fact. We have to use critical thought. And I used that when Obama said, guess what? We want to fundamentally transform this country. He's talking about the foundation, taking the foundation, destroying it, and then building a new foundation, fundamentally transforming the country. And guess what? That it's not going to be any place that even the Democrats are going to want to live.
Now, to me, and I think any of our viewers, I think that it's very evident in the media, especially, that authoritative government, especially, gets called out by the left in the past couple of years, being maybe obnoxiously loud about, okay, well, this is what we don't want. But exactly what you were explaining is them working towards that. So where is that breakdown between whether you have a conservative or a liberal listening and intaking any type of media where they see, well, this side says that they are voicing for pure democracy. They don't want anything to do with authoritative controllers or dictators. And then your book or your documentary is explicitly saying that, well, is this a sleight of a hand play where they are kind of pushing this? And maybe it is kind of a Freudian slip when President Obama does state stuff like that, like this is what were the words you said, a total renewal or takeover.
A fundamental transformation?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That was not a sleight of hand. That was not a Freudian slip. He meant that. This is about fundamentally transforming the country. Now, you see, if I may say, the landscape, the political landscape, and the landscape across the country is literally littered with old liberals, okay? JFKs, RFKs, LBJs, Jimmy Carters, okay? It's the liberals of old are no longer what you're seeing today.
And even Reagan was saying that in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of people that have moved strongly to the left. But more importantly, you know what, you're a very smart young man because you recognize the nuances of what they're trying to do. And it's through repetitive beating up of the American people where they start questioning. This is about changing perceptions and concepts of who we are. I'm a citizen of you can't define who you are. Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother psychological, take. But more importantly, you have people that are, how can I say this? Over time, and this is one of the things that political warfare, it takes time. Here's the thing I want to say, and you'll understand this. You're a very smart young man. Political warfare was waged on the USSR, the Soviet Union, by the American government back in 1960. Right after I want folks to go to and search out John F. Kennedy's speech to the Newspaper Publishers Association in 1963. He's talking about concealment rather than disclosure, about how information is not given to us that is rightly due us. And more importantly, it was shortly thereafter that we had, actually was I believe, I can't remember the exact dates, but the Cuban Missile Crisis was right about that time. John F. Kennedy knew the Soviet Union was being way too aggressive. It's kind of like we have to understand where this comes from, is that it's like Alexander. He looked around, there's no more countries to it. He wept because I've done it all. Pretty much, there's no more countries. We've got to start living in peace. We have the invasion of Ukraine. Why did Putin invade Ukraine? Because Trump was out and because he could. But more important, I want folks to understand, in '63, President Kennedy said, okay, and he began an intense political warfare campaign on the USSR, and it took 30 years, bit by bit, inch by inch, body by body, inch by inch, my friend. We won that war in December 92, with the fall of the Soviet Union. We won that political warfare that President Kennedy began back in 1963. Now, a political warfare is being waged inch by inch on the United States by Marxists right here in our country. They want to fundamentally transform this country, basically, figuratively, burn it down, and then build up a new, more wonderful, diverse, equitable, inclusive nation that it will be wonderful for everybody. But this is the last thing I'm going to say before we go. It's about ownership. I could go in, we'll do another one. It's about what is under our dirt. Mm-hmm. This is where it's about ownership and federalizing the United States. In a crisis is coming of economic proportions that will basically put America in it has to be a national crisis where using executive order that Obama put in, 13683. I can't remember it, but it's called the National Defense Resources Preparedness Act. It can, in a national crisis, the federal government can take ownership or federalize the United States. It's about ownership. Look into the World Economic Forum's advertisement. You will own nothing, but you will.
It's a crazy quote, yeah. Okay, wait. It's an interesting topic to talk about ownership, especially. And then when you're talking about the executive order, if my understanding is correct, that if that did pass, it would only apply to federal agencies under the executive branch. So yeah, okay, maybe he could take ownership, or the executive branch would take ownership of any federalized
in a national crisis.
Mm-hmm. But then,
if I may say, I apologize for interrupting you.
Okay, go.
But here's the thing: President Biden just nationalized the federal labor with a DEI initiative. Did you hear about that?
I didn't know. Under my radar.
Okay, you gotta. If you can go to our website, we show actually talking about Christopher Rufo identifying the DEI commissars in the President Biden basically has said he's nationalized the federal labor force in this country with you've got to meet the DEI narrative, or guess what? You will be cast out. You will. We don't need you. You can go home now. They'll basically lose their jobs. If you don't think that's the case, I beg you to reconsider.
Well, I can understand. I just don't. I think that it would be a smaller percentage. But then when I was looking into your book, something I would say your theory almost is that, okay, well, if you do get into a national emergency based on economic outcries, that you would have states default on their loans.
Called sovereign default.
Yeah, sovereign default. So then, how does that work up to government ownership, though, of all land? Does that affect you and I with our own private lands, or even in the private ownership of businesses?
They can take ownership of everything: agriculture, medicine, the delivery, the transport of goods, DOT. They can waterways, all of it.
So it sounds like
in a national crisis.
Are you describing eminent domain, but in a federal sense?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with eminent domain. Basically, it's a federalization of everything in the United States to save the American people and to save the nation.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like a really large FEMA. And if you don't think that's the case, it's a longer conversation. And I know you're running out of time, but I want you to go to the British Petroleum Strategic Energy Review of 2021. Go to page 16. And you go down that page 16 talks about, in fact, we can have a longer conversation, but they talk about proven reserves as opposed to oil resources. Mm-hmm. Right now, under our dirt is the largest reserve of rather inexpensive shale oil on the planet. It's about taking ownership. We got, according to the proven reserves, the cheap proven reserves on the planet, it is about running out. We only have about 47 years left of inexpensive $5 oil or $5 gasoline. If we have to rely on our resources, a gallon of gas in 25, 30 years, 40 years from now will literally be $100 a gallon. If you don't think that's the case, I beg you to reconsider. All you have to do is go to British Petroleum, and on page 16, it says 1.74. That's in 21. We have now 1,600 and some odd trillion barrels of cheap oil. There's 3 trillion underneath our feet.
Okay, so we've gone through the brief history of kind of the influence of some of the thinkers that have brought us to this point where we're at, and then 2, kind of the more gloomy side of what's happening, and then with keynote to ownership, and then 3, I want to know if in the book as a precursor or the documentary, is there a call to action to fight against this, or is it more of a call to awareness?
It is a call to awareness. We need to reclaim our voice, not the country. The country's still ours. We need to reclaim our voice. We can win this war. There's a Marxist political warfare being waged on this country, and make no mistake, young man, this war can be won by you and I. we need to get our elections back. I don't want to change the 2020 election. What I want to do is make the elections fair and correct. There's a whole discussion, but over the last decade, organizations throughout this country have been registering people to vote by the train load. There's probably about 20, roughly give or take, our team estimates probably about 20 million people in this country right now that are registered to vote that are not citizens. That's how you stuff the ballot box. The liberal machine, the Marxist machine in this country has been registering people to vote in mass, and that's basically, we put it to you this way, and we'll call it a day. Out of the 170 million people in this country that are registered to vote right now, about almost 50% of them are Democrats. 24% are Republicans. The rest are independents. Right from the gate, the liberals have approximately 50 million votes that they can count on right now.
Mm-hmm. Where did you say this is EPAC doing this research, or along with?
There was me and my team. EPAC LLC is not a nonprofit nor a political action committee. Mm-hmm. I earn the money and I spend it to put the book together and put the documentary together and deliver it on a daily basis, a weekly basis, 2 or 3 podcasts, or basically videos that talk about the special, like today. We just talked about the FMIC, the Disinformation Governance Board 2.0.
Yes, well, H.G. Goerner, author and founder and president of Ensure the Preservation of America and Our Constitution. Hugo, thank you for joining us at Liberty Mail. I wish we could talk a little bit more, but for anyone listening, please check out the book on, you said Amazon and the website is the best 2 spots, right?
No, the best way to go is preservingamericaepac.com. Everything you need is right there on our website, preservingamericaepac.com.
You heard it from the man himself. So as always, leave a like and subscribe, and thank you for coming in today, Hugo.
Good luck, young man. God bless. Take care, everybody. EPAC out.
Thank you, guys.
For more information on the Institute for Faith and Freedom, visit faithandfreedom.com.